With Anna Marie Wiley, a political commentator, nurse anesthetist, and former Real Housewife. We are here at Young Women's Leadership Summit of Turning Point USA. Thank you so much for joining me today for this interview.
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. So I was interested to talk to you. I know that you've been really outspoken about trans, about protecting women's sports.
Yes.
I know that was part of the reason why you're not on Real Housewives anymore.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. So I was asked to be on season 13 out of the blue. You know, it was nothing that I was looking to do or that I sought after. I received an Instagram message essentially from one of the cast members after I had met her a few months prior, and she said like, hey, we're filming season 13 and the producers want to know if you'd like to join the cast. And you know, my husband and I thought it would be a great opportunity, a great platform to, you know, kind of showcase a different kind of housewife, right? You know, somebody that has a unique background, a strong nuclear family, somebody that has a sports background, and so it really just happened out of the blue. And then the narrative around me coming on the show was so overwhelmingly positive at first. You know, all the media was so excited. You know, she's wife of football, you know, NFL player Marcellus Wiley. She's a nurse anesthetist. She's got 4 children. Like I said, former athlete, and you know, she's so fun. She's so funny. She's gonna fit into this cast beautifully. And then a clip resurfaced, or someone dug up, of my husband, who again, you know, he'd played NFL for 10 years. He's been a sports broadcaster on, you know, ESPN and Fox Sports for a number of years. So there was a clip of him on one of his shows saying that he would not allow one of our daughters to play sports against a biological boy. He said that he would protect them from that. And, you know, we have 3 daughters and 1 son.
And he probably knows the kind of strength that men have. Being
he was an NFL player for 10 years.
My goodness, those are strong guys.
Exactly. So he said, you know, he would protect our daughters from that. He wouldn't allow that to happen. And so when this clip resurfaced, the narrative completely shifted immediately. And all of a sudden I was transphobic and I was a bigot, and, you know, and then as the season unfolded, you know, I was given this terrible edit by Bravo. You know, probably one of the worst that anybody's ever received. And, you know, there was nothing of my real life that was actually even shown on it, you know. They didn't show me with my family. They just didn't show me as a person. My mother had even come out to me and told me about her cancer diagnosis while we were taping, and you know, they didn't show any of that.
So they just what did they do? They just kind of like remade your whole story?
Yeah, they just made it about, you know, like catty fighting about.
Because they wanted drama.
They just wanted drama.
So they brought you in because you're a healthy woman in a good family with, like, you know, your life together, and then they turned you into a whole drama story.
Exactly. So they brought me in because of this wonderful full life that I have. I'm very blessed to have, and then they just turned everything into.
They wanted you to be dysfunctional.
It was terrible.
And you weren't.
Right.
So they had to make it up.
Right. But then at the end of the season, when they did not ask me to return, the media came out and said, well, the reason that this happened to her is because of her stance on, like, you know, trans and women's sports. And they, you know, were like, well, she's conservative, she's a MAGA Trump supporter, like all of these things. And at first it was so confusing because I was very apolitical. I was not into politics whatsoever. You know, I'm from Canada, so I was actually a lifelong liberal.
Okay, well that's what you have. That's like what it is to be Canadian.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Even the conservatives are basically American liberals.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very, very liberal in Canada. So when this came out, and I was like, well, really, like that makes me conservative? Like, what do these two parties stand for now? And so then I actually started looking into politics a little bit, and I was like, okay, well, what are the things I care about? I care about truth, I care about common sense, I care about my family, I care about my faith, and I care about protection for our country. And I was like, wow, these things make me conservative.
And suddenly wanting good opportunities for your children, that's conservative.
That's conservative.
Suddenly loving your husband and just wanting to stay married, that's conservative.
Exactly.
Knowing fully that biological sex is a reality-based condition that we can't change,
Right.
that's conservative.
Yeah, and I'm
it's
like,
crazy.
I'm in healthcare. Like, I've been an RN for 21 years.
Right.
I've been a nurse anesthetist for 13 years. I'm like, I know biology. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess those things make me conservative. And I always say it, like, I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
Right.
They've moved so far to the left of the
Isn't
pendulum.
it so crazy?
It really is.
Yeah, I feel very similarly. My values are the same as they have been for a very long time.
Yes.
And suddenly being like pro-free speech, that's conservative. You know,
Yes.
you used to be able to be a pro-life Democrat.
Yeah.
Now you're definitely not. You
Right.
know, if you're like opposed to that, you definitely can't be a Democrat.
Right.
You used to be able to be like pro-labor, and now if you're, you know, it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is, and it was just such an eye-opening experience. And then especially when I found out that, you know, that's just, Hollywood does not allow for that. Hollywood does not allow for you to be conservative in their space. Like, if you do not follow their agenda and push the narratives, the woke narratives that they are constantly inundating us with, then they will try to assassinate you and push you out and get you canceled immediately.
And it's shocking. It's shockingly illiberal the way that
yes.
Hollywood deals with that.
Yes.
I mean, they pushed you out for disagreeing with something that makes absolutely no sense because they are illiberal.
Something that 90% of the country agrees with, that biological boys don't belong in women's sports. Yeah, and it's so sad almost, because they really could have leaned into that. You know what I mean? That could have been used as a starting point to start a bigger conversation for them, and to attract another and a bigger audience base with somebody like me, who, you know, now all of a sudden I'm a black female conservative, and, you know, I'm
decided you were conservative, and you were like, oh, I guess maybe I am.
They decided for me that I was conservative,
Right.
and then I was like, yeah, I guess I am now, because the definition of what being liberal has changed
So
so
here
much.
you are at the Young Women's Leadership Summit with Turning Point. You're working with Jennifer Say at XXXY Athletics.
Correct.
You're outspoken about biological reality, about opportunities for girls.
Yep.
You're wearing one of the most beautiful dresses
Thank
I've
you.
seen at this conference, which
Thank
is like,
you.
there's so many gorgeous dresses at this conference. I just want to say
really
this
are.
is an exceptional dress.
you.
What do you have to say to young women who are sort of at these crossroads, right? I mean, we have hookup culture on one side, we
Yeah.
have trad wife on the other.
Yeah.
We have so many different expectations that young women are told that they have to live up to.
Yeah.
How can young women just, you know, be themselves and exist? I mean, what is your message for these girls?
I love that you asked that question, because when I was listening to Erica Kirk speak yesterday, there was one thing that she said that really stood out to me, and it was that as women, we can't have it all.
Right.
Because I very much disagree with that.
Really?
Very much disagree with that.
I saw an interview years ago with Condoleezza Rice where she said, and she doesn't have kids or anything,
Yeah.
she's not married, but she said, you can have it all, you just can't have it all at once.
Exactly. You can have it all. You just can't have it all at once at 100%.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm going to
what
take
do you
that
mean
an
by
extra.
that?
So you can have, because I feel like I'm living proof of that. I have it all. I'm so blessed. God has blessed me so much. If I tell you my background story, and then you see where I am now in my life. So I grew up in a small farm town in Canada. I'm adopted. My biological mother is Dutch. My biological father is Nigerian. They put me up for adoption when I was born. I was adopted by a Dutch Indonesian family, so I grew up in
my goodness.
Asian culture. Yes, I played
Asian culture in Canada.
Asian culture in Canada. Yep, in a small town, and I played sports. You know, I was raised by a single mother. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old, and you know, so very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
And I played sports as a way to, you know, get myself through college. I got my nursing degree, and then 6 months later I moved to Los Angeles as a travel nurse, and I've been there ever since.
Okay.
And you know, then I, you know, decided to get my master's degree and go into anesthesia. Became a nurse anesthetist. I met my you know, NFL husband my first semester of school, and we got married right after I graduated. We started our family. I now have 4 beautiful children, and you know, this really amazing, blessed life. And so
How old is your oldest?
my stepdaughter is 26. She's in New York, you know, living her life. But the oldest that I birthed is 9. My son is 9, and then my girls are 6 and 5.
Okay.
So, you know, So when you say that they can't have it all, you can have it all. I have it all. And I think the thing that we need to understand though is we have to be able to prioritize.
Right.
And we need to be able to balance.
Right.
Those are really the key factors. And I tell young ladies this all the time because I think, especially for conservative women, I've learned that there's such a big emphasis on getting married young.
Right.
And I'm not
When did you get married?
I was 32 when I got married.
Because you went through a lot of schooling first.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And but I also had a 6.5-year relationship before, so I could have gotten married earlier.
Right.
I just didn't want to because I knew that wasn't the right person for me. So there was almost like a turning point for me when I was in this relationship, and I knew that this was not the person I wanted to marry, because I knew exactly the qualities that I was looking for in someone. So there's this pivotal moment where I said, you know what, if I want someone that has X, Y, and Z, I have to have X, Y, and Z. I have to be.
You had to level up yourself.
I had to level up. And I think that's where we have a disconnected society. We've taught women that because you're a woman, you should just expect that. Expect that from a man. Why?
Right.
You need
what
to
are
be
you
equally,
doing
what
too?
What are you bringing to the table? And I know a lot of people they don't like it's controversial to even say that.
That's the new thing where it's why are you saying that?
Yeah,
I've been seeing this online all the time.
Yeah, but I'm no, you need, if I expect that from my partner, I need to be equally yoked. We need to be equally yoked in our relationship. If I'm
that it's a partnership.
Yes, but it's if I'm expecting to attract that person, I have to be that person.
Right.
And so that's literally what I did. I started grad school, and literally right after I started grad school, that's when I stopped going out to the clubs and partying and all those kinds of things. I cleaned up my life a little bit, and I started grad school, and then God gave me my husband almost immediately, and then we got married as soon as I was done, and everything just snowballed from there. But I feel like it's important to know who you are, know what you want, and be the best version of yourself. Create the best version of yourself before you're even looking for your husband. Because if you get married, and I'm not saying that's for everybody. I'm sure it works wonderfully for some people. But if I know that at 21 years old, I was not me yet.
Right.
I wouldn't have known.
You were not you yet.
I was
at 21.
not me.
When
No.
did you become you?
I was me. 29 years old.
Okay.
29 years old. Yeah.
I remember the first time I realized I didn't feel self-conscious.
Yeah.
I was 32 and I was in a record shop in Princeton, New Jersey, and I was like, oh, I don't care what all these people think of the records I buy. Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's a new feeling. That's a new feeling for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because at 21 years old, I would have been open to being treated any way or living any kind of life, and I wouldn't be who I am today if that were the case.
Right.
So at 29 years old, I was clear on what I wanted, who I wanted, what I wanted my life to look like, and what my steps had to be to create that life that I wanted. And I think because I worked hard and I made good decisions, I think God rewarded me accordingly. That's why I tell young girls, work on yourself, become the best version of yourself first. Whatever that looks like for you, whether that's career-wise, whether that's family-wise, or whatever that is, whatever that means to you, be the best version of yourself first, because you're just going to attract the best person for you, the right person for you, and not just settle and think, oh, I have to get married because that's just what everyone's doing.
Right.
So I'm big on education. I'm big on women working. I think that's wonderful. And I think that if a woman wants to stay home too, that's wonderful too. I took off periods of time too to be home and raise my children. I think that's very, very important. But I think that's where the balance comes in, right? And that's where the prioritization comes in. If you don't want to work, wonderful. If you do want to work and you want to be there for your family, you can do that. You just have to be smart and strategic in what field you decide to go into, and be realistic, knowing that you are going to be able to do that and have the lifestyle that you want.
What about the whole thing where everyone says, the whole sort of social thing, follow your bliss, follow your dreams? What do you make of that sort of idea? What is that?
Follow your dreams, follow your bliss. Explain that a little more to me.
I've been struggling with this myself, because when I was younger, when I was a teenager, there was a big push to. I grew up in the Northeast, and it was push your family, ignore your family, push your family aside, move on, go somewhere else,
Okay.
achieve big dreams.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I kind of like it here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily, I don't want to move to California.
Yeah,
You know what I
okay.
mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
just stick around where I'm from.
Yeah.
But there's this idea that you're supposed to follow your bliss, that you're supposed to seek what your heart desires.
Yeah.
And let your heart guide you.
Yeah.
And I wonder about that because it has the potential to embed you in a lot of really impractical lifestyles.
Yeah, I could see that. To me, I would say it does sound to me like you did follow your bliss.
A little bit.
Because your bliss was staying there.
Right.
So I'll twist that a little bit and be like, well, maybe following your bliss doesn't always mean leaving.
It doesn't always mean leaving. It's
doesn't.
okay to stay.
Yeah, change or following your bliss does not always mean change. For me, it did mean leaving, and it did mean change because, like I said, as soon as I graduated from undergrad, I moved to California, but that was also me making a conscious decision, knowing the kind of life that I wanted and knowing that I probably wasn't going to find it where I grew up. So that was me following my bliss to change.
Right.
For other people, that doesn't have to mean change. If your bliss is where you are, then stay with where you are happy.
Right.
So
tell me a little bit about the nonprofit you and your husband are working on.
So our nonprofit is called Project Transition. We started it in 2018. My husband and I are both, kind of those fork in the road kids. I told you about my background and how sports helped me so much. My husband is born and raised in Compton, California. He, both of us from very humble beginnings. He ended up, going to Columbia University and then to the NFL. And
that's not a normal path.
it's not a normal path.
Ivy League to the NFL.
Neither of us have normal paths, but we had a lot of very instrumental people helping us along that way. And so our nonprofit, we work with youth in underserved communities to help educate and empower them to be greater than their greatest excuse. We think that one thing that's very important for children is exposure. So a lot of these kids, they're in their environments and they are not able to see other things that can broaden their horizons and, help them to aspire higher. And so we provide opportunities for that to happen for them. So,
cool. What does an opportunity look like?
So for example, we could have like a mentorship day. So we'll bring them to, like a country club or something, and we're going to give them classes about different sorts of avenues that they're interested in, and we're going to have kind of like a see it, be it sort of experience where, someone wants to be a CEO, someone wants to go into finance, someone wants to go into healthcare. They have chances to connect with and meet mentors in those spaces. We'll teach them about, job applications or resumes, those kinds of things. And then we'll go out and play golf, or we'll go out and play pickleball, because those are wonderful networking opportunities that they're going to be able to utilize going forward.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to me today.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing.